The bell above the door chimes at 3:22 in the morning. The sound pierces through Rose's diner like a blade, sharp and deliberate, and everything that comes after will be measured in the seconds before that door opens and after it closes again. Mia Reynolds staggers through, and the world stops. She is 26 years old, but exhaustion and pain have rewritten her face into something that belongs to a woman twice that age. Her blonde hair, usually pulled into a tight bun for work, is plastered to her pale cheeks with sweat and blood. Her white nanny uniform is soaked crimson from her left shoulder down to her hip, the fabric heavy and dark where it clings to her ribs. 7 bullet wounds map across her body like a constellation of horror, and with each step she takes, blood drips onto the black and white checkered floor with a wet, deliberate sound. Plip. 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 The rhythm of a life measured in seconds. Her breathing is ragged, broken, gasping, each inhale a struggle as though her lungs are filling with something other than air. She grips the doorframe with both hands, her knuckles white, her fingers trembling so violently that the wood seems to vibrate beneath her touch. The smell of stale coffee and bacon grease hangs thick in the diner, mixing now with the copper scent of her blood, creating something that smells like death wearing the mask of breakfast. At the corner booth, 3 men in suits sit frozen mid-conversation. Their coffee cups hover halfway to their lips. Their hands rest on the table, one still holding a folded newspaper. The man in the center sits with the kind of stillness that only comes from absolute power or absolute fear, and in his case, it has always been both. Alejandro Caruso. He is 34 years old and looks like the night sky might look if it learned to wear a custom-tailored Italian suit. His dark hair is slicked back from a face that carries a scar running from his left eye to his cheekbone, a reminder of a war he won but never forgot. His eyes are storm gray, the kind of gray that makes men confess sins they have not yet committed. He wears a white dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the hard lines of his chest, and a black suit that costs more than most people's cars. On his left wrist, a gold watch ticks away time as if time itself answers to him. Next to him sits Sergio, tall and broad-shouldered, with a face that has learned not to show emotion. On his other side is Sal, younger, darker, with hands that have done things those hands will never speak about. When Mia stumbles forward, when her body betrays gravity and momentum all at once, Alejandro's entire body goes rigid. Emma, she gasps, and the word comes out shattered, broken, barely recognizable as human speech. And Marco, safe. Got them, out. The sugar dispenser on the nearest table tips as she collapses against it, white crystal scattering across the red blood pooling on the linoleum. The noise is small, insignificant, the sound of sweetness spilling into ruin. Her right hand reaches out as if to steady herself, and in that trembling grip is a child's pink hair ribbon, the kind that belongs to a 5-year-old girl, the kind that holds memories of laughter and pigtails and a voice saying, "Vivi, higher, push me higher." Alejandro rises from his booth. Not quickly. Not in panic. He rises the way a man rises when his entire world has just shifted on its axis and he is the only one who understands what has happened. His men do not move. They watch. They have worked for Alejandro Caruso for 15 years, some longer, and in all that time they have never seen him move toward a bleeding woman with anything that resembles tenderness. Recognition floods his face like a storm finding its target. This woman. This is the woman who saved his daughter 2 months ago. The woman he has been searching for. The woman he has had every resource in his empire dedicated to finding because on a Tuesday afternoon in September, he received a call that Emma had stopped breathing on the mansion steps, had turned the color of a bruise, had been moments away from becoming a memory instead of a living child. And this woman, this stranger in a white uniform, had known CPR. Had pressed her palms against Emma's small chest and had not stopped, had not given up, had pushed air back into lungs that had forgotten how to breathe, and Emma had coughed and gasped and come back to a world that had almost lost her. He had never found her. His people had tried. They had searched the city, had knocked on doors, had followed every thread, and then she had vanished like smoke, like she had been a ghost all along, a guardian angel that materializes and then dissolves back into the darkness from which such creatures come. But now she is here, bleeding in Rose's diner at 3 a.m, and Alejandro Caruso understands in a single moment that the universe does not deal in coincidence. It deals in fate, and fate has just walked through that door, leaving a trail of blood on a checkered floor. "Somebody call an ambulance," he says, and his voice is deep and solid like an oath, like a command written into the fabric of the world. Now. Sal is already dialing. Sergio is already moving toward Mia with a black jacket in his hands, pressing it gently against the wound on her ribs, being careful, being cautious, because this is the boss's order, and the boss's orders are the closest thing to God that men like them believe in. "What is your name?" Alejandro asks, and he kneels beside her, actually kneels, and in 15 years neither Sergio nor Sal has ever seen him kneel for anyone. His expensive suit touches the contaminated floor without hesitation. His hands, which have signed orders that ended lives, reach out with gentleness. "Mia," she whispers. Her voice trembles like a candle in the wind, barely there, barely real. "My name is Mia Reynolds." "And the children, Mia? Tell me about the children." She blinks, and tears cut through the blood on her face like small rivers finding their path through a landscape of ruin. "Emma and Marco." "You're. I think they're your." She cannot finish. Her eyes close. Her hand grips his wrist with a strength that should not exist in a body that is actively bleeding to death. "I could not let him take them. I could not let Douglas find them. I drove them to the precinct, gave them to Officer Chen, told her to call their father, and then I drove away because he was behind me, and I needed him to follow me instead, and he did, and the bullets came through the windshield like." She does not finish that sentence either. She does not need to. Alejandro understands. He understands that this woman, this stranger who saved his daughter's life 3 months ago, has just taken 7 bullets meant for his children. He understands that she has deliberately driven away from them to protect them. He understands that she has sacrificed her own body as a shield against violence. "The ambulance is 7 minutes away," Sal says quietly. Alejandro looks down at the pink ribbon in Mia's hand, at the way her fingers are still gripping it even as consciousness begins to slip away from her eyes. Emma loves that ribbon. Emma wears it every day when she thinks about Vivi, about the nanny who saved her life and then disappeared, about the woman she has drawn pictures of in school with blonde hair and sad eyes, pictures she keeps under her pillow because her father does not understand that children remember kindness the way adults remember trauma. "Stay with me," Alejandro says, and he presses his forehead close to hers, close enough that she can see the scar on his face, close enough that she understands she is looking at a man who has killed and been willing to die. "You are not leaving this diner. Do you understand me? You are not leaving." The sirens begin in the distance, growing louder, growing closer, and in the background, the clock on the wall of Rose's diner ticks forward to 3:23 in the morning. Before we continue, if this story has already grabbed your heart, drop a like button right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear what happens next. Subscribe to this channel because what is coming will change everything you think you know about sacrifice, about family, about what it means to choose someone else's children over your own survival. Now let us rewind. Let us go back to where this story truly began, to a moment 6 days earlier when Mia Reynolds was counting the $17.32 in her pocket and trying to figure out how she would eat for the next 4 days. Because understanding how we arrive at the most important moments of our lives requires us to walk backward through the darkness that came before the light. 2 months earlier. Tuesday afternoon at 2:45. The sun hangs bright and merciless over Pacific Heights, casting sharp shadows across the mansions that line the street like monuments to a world Mia Reynolds will never enter. She pulls the borrowed Honda, a 10-year-old grey sedan with rust blooming along the wheel wells, into the narrow driveway of the Blackwood estate. The car coughs twice before the engine dies. She sits for a moment, hands still gripping the steering wheel, gathering the strength to move her body from the driver's seat to the trunk to unload the groceries that will feed 2 children and one woman who treats her like she is made of air. Mia is 28 years old but carries the exhaustion of someone twice that age. Her blonde hair, once bright, now sits dull and pulled back so tight it pulls at her temples. There are circles under her blue eyes so dark they look like bruises, and her hands, small and delicate, are calloused from years of scrubbing floors, washing dishes, folding clothes that belong to other people. She wears a pale grey uniform, the kind of shapeless dress that signals to the world that she exists in service to it, and it is stained at the cuff with a child's orange juice from breakfast. She opens the trunk and begins lifting paper bags, one after another, stacking them against her thin ribs. Chicken breasts. Organic vegetables. Imported cheese. None of it is for her. She will eat what the Blackwoods leave behind on their plates, or she will not eat. This is the mathematics of her life, calculated daily, always subtracting. That is when she hears it. A sound like gurgling. Like something caught in a throat that should not be caught there. It comes from the mansion steps next door, from the property that sits behind a wrought iron fence, the house so large it swallows the entire corner of the street. Mia freezes. The grocery bags slip from her arms and fall to the pavement, apples rolling across concrete. She does not think. There is no moment of hesitation, no calculation of whether this is her responsibility, whether she should get involved. She simply moves. Her body propels itself toward the sound the way a body moves toward fire, toward danger, toward anything that requires her to stop thinking about her own survival for even a moment. What she finds on the mansion steps is a child. A girl, no more than 5 years old, with dark curling hair and a pink cotton dress. Her face is the color of a plum. Her small hands claw at her throat. Her eyes roll backward and she makes that sound again, that terrible gurgling that means the airway is closing, that means a human body is slowly being denied oxygen, that means death is happening in front of this little girl's own eyes. Mia drops to her knees. The concrete scrapes her skin but she does not feel it. "Sweetheart, I need you to look at me. Can you look at me?" The child cannot look at anything. She is drowning on dry land. Mia has never taken a CPR course. She has never been trained. She has no certification and no license and no authority to touch this child. But she has lived through 8 years of violence that taught her body what survival looks like, and survival requires the ability to act when every instinct screams to hide. She positions the child flat on her back on the marble steps. The girl's body is light, almost insubstantial, like a bird. Mia tilts the small head back gently, lifting the chin, opening the airway. She places her mouth over the child's mouth and nose, covering both with her lips. She breathes in, slow and deliberate, watching the small chest rise as the air enters the lungs. 1 breath. 2 breaths. She moves her hands to the child's chest, finds the sternum, and begins compressions. The space between her hands and the child's body is so small, almost nothing. Gentle pressure. 30 compressions. The rhythm is something she feels in her own chest, a kind of prayer without words, a rhythm that sounds like a heartbeat, like the sound of refusing to accept that someone else's child can die on marble steps on a Tuesday afternoon while the sun shines and the world continues. Breath. Compressions. Breath. Compressions. There is no time. Time has stopped. Then the child coughs. Her body convulses and a hard candy, bright red like a drop of blood, flies from her mouth and clatters against the stone. The girl gasps, a terrible, ugly sound, the sound of a body remembering how to breathe. Her eyes snap open, wild and terrified, and she begins to cry. She begins to cry, and this is the most beautiful sound Mia has ever heard in her life. "You are okay. You are okay, sweetheart. You are breathing. That is all you need to do right now." Mia's voice trembles like a candle in the wind. Her hands shake as she gathers the child against her chest, feeling the small body tremble, feeling the heartbeat that is still racing but is present, is alive, is beating against her ribs like a second chance. That is when the man appears. He emerges from the mansion like something conjured by the expensive stones themselves. He is tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders that fill the doorway completely. His skin is olive dark, his hair black and thick and swept back from a face that has been marked by time and by violence. There is a scar that runs from his left eye to his cheekbone, a thin white line that catches the sunlight like a blade. He wears a suit that costs more than everything Mia owns, a suit made of fabric so fine it looks liquid, charcoal gray with a white shirt unbuttoned at the collar. There is a gold watch on his left wrist, heavy and understated, and his eyes, dark and penetrating as storm clouds, move from the child to Mia to the candy on the steps and back to Mia again. For a moment, no one moves. No one breathes. The three of them exist in a pocket of absolute stillness. Then the man moves toward his daughter and Mia understands that she should release the child, should step back, should disappear into the background the way women like her are supposed to do. But the girl has her arms locked around Mia's neck, her small hands gripping the worn fabric of the grey uniform dress like it is the only solid thing in a world that has just tried to end her. "It is okay, Emma," the man says. His voice is like venom, like something dangerous being poured slowly. "It is okay. You are safe." He gently unwraps his daughter's arms and lifts her, and as he does, his eyes meet Mia's for the first time with something like recognition, though they have never met before. "You are safe," he says again, and Mia understands that he is no longer speaking to the child. "She had something in her throat," Mia says quietly. Her voice sounds like it is coming from someone else's body. "Hard candy. I heard her from the driveway and I came. It took a few minutes but she started breathing again." The man studies her with an intensity that makes her want to step backward, want to fold into herself, want to become invisible. His eyes move across her face like he is reading something written there in a language he understands better than she does. Then he says, "You saved my daughter's life. What is your name?" "Mia Reynolds, sir." "I am just glad she is okay." "Mia." He says her name like it is something worth remembering. Like it is the name of someone who matters. "If you ever need anything, you find me. You understand? Anything at all." He does not give her a phone number or an address or even his own name. He says it as though she will simply know how to find him, as though his existence is so large in the world that locating him requires no more effort than finding water or sunlight. Then he turns and carries Emma back inside the mansion, and Mia stands alone on the driveway with a scattered pile of groceries and the knowledge that she has just done something that has changed something about the world, though she cannot yet understand what. She gathers the apples. She picks up the paper bags. She carries them to the back door of the Blackwood mansion, to the servants' entrance, to the kitchen where she will spend the next 4 hours preparing food she will not eat. But later that evening, when she returns to her converted storage closet, when she sits on her thin cot beneath the single light bulb that hums against the darkness, she realizes something has shifted inside her chest. It is a small thing, almost nothing. It is the memory of being necessary. It is the feeling of a child's heartbeat against her own heart. It is the knowledge that she was not invisible for those few minutes on the marble steps, that she was seen by someone, that her hand saved a life. The next morning, the eviction notice appears under her door like a curse. The paper is official and stamped with the seal of a law firm. The deadline is printed in red ink, impossible to miss, impossible to ignore. 12 days. She has 12 days to vacate the room she is renting from the Blackwood estate, 12 days to find somewhere else to live, somewhere to survive. The amount owed is $22,000. She counts the money in her wallet with shaking hands. $78. $78 against $22,000 is the same as standing at the edge of an ocean and being asked to cross it with a teaspoon. She does not understand that Cordelia Blackwood, the cruel matriarch of the mansion where Mia serves, has hired her precisely because desperate women make the best tools. Cordelia does not understand her husband's betrayal, does not comprehend why his loyalties have shifted, does not know that Alejandro Caruso, the most feared man in the city, has been using her marriage to hide his operation. But she knows desperation when she sees it, and she has plans for a woman as broken as Mia Reynolds, plans that will position the nanny in Alejandro's path once more, plans that will use every bit of Mia's vulnerability to acquire the $22,000 in documents hidden in the study, documents that will give Cordelia the leverage she needs to destroy her husband's kingdom before he destroys her. What Mia does not know is that in trying to save her own life, she will soon be asked to choose someone else's life instead. She does not know that in 12 days, everything will change. She does not know that kindness, that single moment of seeing a child on marble steps and choosing to move toward death rather than away from it, will set into motion a series of events that will connect her forever to a man with a scar on his face and a code of honor that demands he repay debts of the blood kind. The clock in her small room ticks forward. 11 days remain. Then 10. Then 9. And somewhere across the city, in an office on the 42nd floor of a building that bears no name, Alejandro Caruso tells his lieutenants to find out everything they can about a blonde woman named Mia Reynolds who saved his daughter's life and then disappeared back into the poverty from which she came, a woman he has not been able to stop thinking about, a woman whose exhausted blue eyes have begun to haunt him in ways he does not yet understand. The black sedan had been following the same route for 7 days now. Mia saw it turn onto Laurel Street at 3:51 in the afternoon, the same time she always walked Emma and Marco home from their private school in Pacific Heights. The car stayed 3 blocks back, deliberate, patient, driven by a man whose face she could not see but whose intention was written in the way he never rushed, never closed the distance, just maintained it like a hunter following wounded prey. She held Emma's hand tighter. The 5-year-old girl noticed immediately. "Miss Mia, you are hurting my fingers." "I am sorry, sweetheart." Mia loosened her grip, but her heart continued its rapid knocking against her ribs. She had learned to recognize the feeling of being hunted. 8 years teaches you certain lessons about survival that no school can provide. That night, in her converted closet room on the 3rd floor of the Blackwood mansion, her phone illuminated with a text from an unknown number. The words arrived at 11:52 p.m., just as she was lying in the darkness, listening to the San Francisco fog press against the small window above her bed. "Found you, Mia. 8 years you owe me. Time to collect. D." Her hands moved before her mind could process the message. The phone dropped to the hardwood floor, and she could not bring herself to pick it up for nearly 10 minutes. When she finally did, the screen had gone dark, but the text remained, burned into her memory like a brand, like all the other brands Douglas Hale had left on her body. Douglas Hale. The name moved through her consciousness like poison through water. 8 years had passed since she ran from that basement with nothing but the clothes on her back and the scars on her spine that spelled out his ownership in a language only the broken could read. She had never told anyone. The shame had calcified into her skeleton, had become part of the architecture of who she was, a secret she carried the way some people carry crosses. She did not sleep. She lay in the dark and counted the money in her wallet for the 1,000th time. $78. That was all that stood between her and the street. $78 and the hope that nobody would find her. But somebody had. The next morning, at exactly 9:06 a.m., Cordelia Blackwood called her into the mansion study. The room smelled of old leather and older money, the kind of wealth that did not need to announce itself. Floor-to-ceiling books lined shelves that had never been read. A fireplace held cold ashes. And behind an antique desk that cost more than 3 years of Mia's salary, Cordelia sat with her hands folded, her smile sharp as a blade wrapped in silk. "Sit, dear." Not a request. Cordelia's voice had that quality, the ability to make even invitations sound like orders. Mia Saturday. Her palms began to sweat immediately. "You have been with us for 2 months now. You are adequate with the children. Emma has become rather attached to you, which is convenient because I need you to do something for me." Cordelia's fingers, each one crowned with a diamond that caught the morning light, began to tap against the desk in a rhythm like a countdown. There are documents in Alejandro's private study. Legal papers. Certain documents that would be worth a great deal of money to certain people. $22,000, to be specific. The number landed like a stone in Mia's stomach. "I need you to retrieve them for me." "I cannot do that, Mrs. Blackwood." "I would never." "Let me finish." Cordelia's smile widened, and in that widening, Mia saw the full machinery of her cruelty. "You have no work permit, dear. None whatsoever. Your entire employment in this country is a fabrication. One phone call to immigration, and you disappear. One phone call, and every door closes. You will be on a street with $78 in your pocket and no place to hide." Mia's blood turned to ice. It was true. She had no permit. She had entered the country illegally, had built her entire life on the foundation of a lie, and Cordelia Blackwood had known this all along. Had hired her knowing it. Had chosen her precisely because of it. Get me those documents within 7 days, and I will pay you enough to disappear. Start a new life somewhere safe, somewhere Douglas Hale will never find you. Refuse, and I make that one phone call, and the monsters come for you legally. Your choice, dear. Monsters or survival. Mia left that study with her hands trembling so violently she could barely hold the banister. The rage, the helplessness, the perfect trap of it. Cordelia had constructed a prison with no walls, one made entirely of Mia's own vulnerabilities. That night, she wrote in the small journal she kept hidden beneath her mattress, the one she had started writing in the day she escaped the basement 8 years ago. Her handwriting was small and careful and desperate. I am trapped between men who want to own my body and women who want to own my choices. $78 will not save me. Nothing will. I saved a child who was drowning, and I thought that meant I was good, that it meant something. But goodness is a luxury item, and I cannot afford it anymore. She did not know that in that same hour, on the 42nd floor of a building that bore no name, Alejandro Caruso was reviewing a file that had been delivered to him by his head of security. The file contained photographs of a woman with blonde hair and exhausted blue eyes. The file contained an address in Douglas Hale's network, contact information for a trafficker who had operated in the shadows of San Francisco for 13 years. The file contained a list of 17 documented victims. Mia Reynolds' name was 7th on that list. What changed everything was the following afternoon, when Emma and Marco were supposed to be picked up from their private school by Chen, the family driver, a man who had been with the Blackwood household for 4 years, a man Mia trusted. But when the car arrived, it was not Chen who sat behind the wheel. It was a stranger in a dark suit, and his hand moved toward the interior of his jacket with the kind of calculated speed that could only mean one thing. Mia saw it happen in slow motion and fast motion simultaneously, the way trauma trains your instincts to operate at 2 speeds at once. She saw the man's hand. She saw his face, unfamiliar and cold. She saw Emma standing frozen on the curb, her small pink backpack still clutched in both hands. Her body moved before her mind caught up. No. The word came out as something between a whisper and a scream. She pulled both children backward, away from the car, away from the hand that was now fully visible, and she screamed for help, screamed until windows opened and neighbors appeared and the car accelerated away with a sound like a weapon being discharged into the afternoon air. Within 4 minutes, 3 black SUVs arrived in a formation that looked choreographed. Within 5 minutes, Alejandro Caruso stepped out of the center vehicle, and the entire world seemed to tilt on its axis. He was taller than his reputation, broader across the shoulders than photographs suggested, and his face bore a scar that ran from the corner of his eye to his jawline like a line drawn by violence. He moved toward the children with a speed that contradicted his size, dropping to one knee in front of Emma and Marco, his large hands checking their arms, their faces, his voice shaking slightly when he spoke. "Are you hurt? Did he touch you? Tell me." Emma wrapped her arms around his neck, her small voice steady. "No, Papa. Miss Mia pushed us away. She saved us." Alejandro's eyes moved to Mia. The intensity of his gaze felt like being seen for the first time in her entire life, like someone had looked directly into her and refused to look away. Standing 10 feet away, his lieutenants exchanged a look that meant something had shifted. Sergio, the older man with gray threading through his dark hair, turned to Sal and spoke so quietly only he could hear, 15 years I have worked for him. Never seen him like this. Never seen his hands shake. Alejandro stood, and when he did, his attention remained entirely on Mia. You saw something wrong and acted. Why? Because they are children, Mr. Caruso. That is all the reason I need. He studied her with those dark eyes that missed nothing, eyes that could read a room the way other people read books. She could see him taking in her trembling hands, the way she flinched when one of his men moved too quickly, the exhaustion that had worn grooves into her face. Come with me. We need to talk. The drive to the mansion took 17 minutes. Mia sat in the back seat between Emma and Marco, their small bodies pressed against her like anchors, while Alejandro occupied the front passenger seat, his presence filling the vehicle the way some people fill rooms with their voice. He did not speak. The silence was not empty. It was full of something she could not name. In his private study, the room was exactly as she had imagined it, leather chairs the color of blood, a fireplace crackling with real fire, the smell of expensive whiskey and old paper and power. Emma and Marco ran to Mia immediately, wrapping around her legs, their voices overlapping. "Miss Mia, you are here. Will you stay tonight? Can you braid my hair?" Alejandro watched how the children clung to her, how her hands automatically moved to smooth their hair, how her entire face transformed when she looked at them. Something shifted in his expression, a tectonic movement of understanding. "Take the children to the playroom," he said to the woman who appeared in the doorway. "Give them dinner." When they were alone, he poured 2 drinks without asking if she wanted one. The liquid was amber and moved slowly in the crystal glasses, worth more than anything she owned. "Tell me what you are running from, Mia Reynolds. And do not say nothing. I have been watching you for 2 months. You work 14-hour days for people who treat you like furniture. You have $78 to your name. Yesterday, someone followed you for 6 blocks. Talk." She resisted. "Why would you help me? I am nobody. A nanny who sleeps in a closet. You are Alejandro Caruso. Everyone knows what that means." "What that means," he said, his voice like thunder moving slowly across a distant sky, "is I have the power to protect people who matter to me. You saved my daughter's life 2 months ago. You just saved both my children from a kidnapping. That makes you somebody." And then Mia broke. The words spilled out like blood from a wound that had been sealed but never healed. She told him about the basement, about the age of 18 when she was young enough to believe in rescue, about the 8 years she spent learning that some chains are invisible and some scars cannot be hidden. She showed him the marks on her back, 8 years of ownership written in a language only the broken understood. Alejandro's face went absolutely still, the kind of stillness that precedes violence, the kind of quiet before a storm that tears everything down to its foundation. "How much?" His voice was barely a sound. $22,000. In 7 days. And Cordelia Blackwood wants me to steal from you to get it. She threatened to report me to immigration if I refuse. She watched comprehension move through him like darkness spreading across water. "You will stay here," he said. "You will not go back to Blackwood's house. You will not face this alone. I cannot accept that. I cannot drag you into my nightmare. You are not dragging me anywhere." He moved closer, and she could smell the smoke from his cigarette, the expensive cologne, something underneath that smelled like rainfall. "I am choosing to stand between you and the monsters. There is a difference." Emma appeared in the doorway in pajamas, her small frame silhouetted by the hallway light. Her voice was small and certain. "Is Miss Mia staying? Please say yes, Papa." The word Papa in his daughter's voice, directed at him while looking at Mia with hope, cracked something in Alejandro's chest that he had kept locked away for 7 years, since the day his wife died and he learned that love is just another word for vulnerability. But what Mia did not know was that she had already become the most dangerous thing to a man like Alejandro Caruso, someone he could not afford to lose, someone whose safety had become more important than his own survival, someone who had made herself irreplaceable in the span of a single afternoon. The wind outside began to pick up, moving through San Francisco's streets like a warning, like a storm gathering its force somewhere beyond the horizon, waiting for the moment when it could no longer be contained. The October wind cut through San Francisco's streets like a blade wrapped in ice, and Mia Reynolds stood on the corner of 5th and Market with her phone trembling in her hands. For blocks behind her lay the mansion where she had slept, where she had believed for exactly 18 hours that safety might actually exist. For blocks ahead lay the waterfront, where the bay stretched dark and infinite and promising in a way that terrified her. The text message from an unknown number had arrived at 5:52 a.m. Check your email. Your daughter's smile is beautiful. Such a shame if something happened to it. Her hand shook as she opened the message. A photograph. Emma and Marco in Alejandro's garden, tied to the stone bench near the fountain, their faces twisted in confusion and fear. The metadata timestamp read 5:16 a.m. Cordelia Blackwood had walked them out while everyone slept. Then came the phone call. Douglas Hale's voice slid through the speaker like poison through water, familiar in a way that made her stomach clench. She had not heard that voice in 8 years. 8 years of trying to believe he could not find her. The distance and new names and constant movement had finally put enough space between them that he might forget she existed. "Hello, Mia." He said her name like he owned it. "Surprised? Where are they?" Her voice cracked like old ice. "Safe for now." Cordelia was kind enough to facilitate the introduction. "Turns out your rich boss's security has a weakness when the person opening the gate is wearing the Blackwood name. Did you know Cordelia's been looking for leverage against Caruso for months? My arrival was quite convenient. She gets the documents and 40,000 from me once I'm finished with you. Everyone wins. I will give you whatever you want. Just let them go. I know you will." His breathing was audible, steady, the breathing of a man without conscience. "The warehouse on Pier 19. You have 90 minutes. Bring the $22,000 you owe me and those documents Cordelia wants so badly. Come alone. Try to bring anyone else and I will cut off the girl's fingers one at a time while you watch. I want you to remember what I taught you, Mia. I want you to remember that you belong to me." The line went dead. Mia stood motionless on that frozen street corner. The San Francisco morning moved around her, taxis honking, a delivery truck rumbling past, the mechanical sounds of a city that did not know that 2 children were bound to a chair in a warehouse, that a woman who had been trying to disappear was being pulled backward into the exact hell she had fled. She had $78. No documents. No power. No choices. The despair arrived like drowning. Like someone had filled her lungs with concrete and was watching to see how long she would struggle. She had done everything right. She had worked 14-hour days. She had saved every penny. She had kept her head down and her mouth shut and asked for nothing. And still, the darkness had found her. Still, the men who owned pieces of her soul were collecting their debt. She took 3 steps toward the bay. The water was visible from here, gray-green and infinite, and she could feel it calling. How easy it would be to simply walk in. How easy to let the cold take her, to stop fighting, to finally rest. If she was gone, Douglas Hale would have no leverage. He would have no reason to hurt Emma and Marco. They would survive because she would not. She took another step. Then she heard it, a child's laughter from one of the brownstones behind her, high and pure and achingly familiar. Emma's giggle. The exact sound Emma made when Mia braided her hair into careful plaits and told her stories about mermaids and starlight. Mia stopped. She turned around slowly, facing away from the water. If I die, who will fight for them? The thought arrived with crystal clarity. Not Alejandro, he was powerful, but he did not know Douglas Hale, did not understand the machinery of violence that operated in the spaces where law enforcement could not reach. Not Cordelia, she wanted them destroyed, or at least wanted them destroyed after extracting maximum leverage. Only Mia knew the way Douglas Hale's mind worked. Only Mia had survived him once. Only Mia could look him in the eye and do what needed to be done. She pulled up Alejandro's number with shaking fingers and called. He answered before the first ring finished, his voice controlled terror wrapped in ice. Mia. Where are you? The twins are gone and you are gone, Anne. Pier 19. Hale has them. Cordelia helped him. He wants the documents and 22,000 in 90 minutes. He will kill them if anyone but me arrives. Silence stretched between them, and in that silence, she could hear him making calculations, running through scenarios, assessing the impossible. When he spoke again, his voice had transformed. The man who had shown her kindness was gone. In his place was Alejandro Caruso, the Mafia boss, the man who could move heaven and earth if it served his purposes. I am coming. Do not go there alone. He said. I do not care what he said. You will not face this man by yourself. His voice was final. Go to the warehouse. Buy yourself time. I will be 15 minutes behind you. She hung up before she could argue further, before she could convince herself that his arrival would doom him. With her $78, she took a taxi to Pier 19. The warehouse district was a graveyard of rust and abandonment. Corrugated metal walls painted in peeling industrial gray. The smell of rotting fish and brine so thick it coated her throat. Seagulls circled overhead, their cries sharp and accusatory. Douglas Hale stood in the center of the warehouse with Emma and Marco zip-tied to metal chairs. He looked exactly as she remembered, cold eyes set deep in a narrow face, hands scarred from fights she had lost. A scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw, a permanent reminder of the night a man named Vincent Moretti had tried to kill him and settled for a permanent mark instead. He wore an expensive suit, tailored, with a gold watch that cost more than Mia made in a year. He had aged well. That was the cruelest part. The men who did terrible things seemed to weather them without consequence. Cordelia Blackwood stood beside him in a cream-colored cashmere coat, her face arranged in an expression of pure satisfaction. She was looking at Mia like someone admiring a particularly interesting insect. Well, well, Douglas said when Mia entered. The ghost returns. Did you bring my payment? Mia spread her hands empty. I brought myself. Let them go. Your business is with me, not with children. Douglas laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You are still playing the hero. I broke you of that once. I broke your back and your spirit and your will to resist. Guess I need to do it again, but this time with an audience so your rich boyfriend knows exactly what happens when he tries to protect something that belongs to me. Emma saw Mia and began to cry, pulling at the zip ties. Miss Mia. I am scared. Papa said to be brave, but I am scared. The sound of her voice shattered something inside Mia's chest. She took a step forward and Douglas raised his hand, and in that hand was a gun, and his finger was on the trigger, and the entire equation of the world shifted. One more step and I shoot the boy first. Let him bleed out slow while you watch. Then we can have our reunion, you and I. The warehouse doors exploded inward. 12 men in black tactical gear moved through the space like ghosts, weapons raised, red laser sights painting the air. Alejandro Caruso stood at the center, flanked by Sergio and Sal, his face carved from stone. He had changed into tactical clothing, abandoning the luxury of his usual suits for function. His movements were precise, economical, the movements of a man who had trained for violence his entire life. The smell of gun oil and cold metal filled the warehouse. Alejandro's voice was death itself, deep and solid like an oath. Step away from my children. Step away from her. Now. Douglas raised his gun, grabbed Mia as a shield, his arm around her throat. She could feel the pulse in his wrist, racing, could smell the sweat breaking through his expensive cologne. He was afraid. She had never seen Douglas Hale afraid before. You move and I kill her. Back away, Caruso. All of you. Back away or she dies. What happened next was something no one in that warehouse could have predicted. Headlights flooded through the broken doors. A car raced forward with insane speed, and behind the wheel, Cordelia Blackwood's face was twisted with rage. She was trying to create chaos, trying to give Douglas a window to escape, willing to run down Alejandro's men to achieve it. Mia saw the trajectory. Saw the car's path. Saw that Emma and Marco were directly in its line of fire. She ripped free from Douglas's grip and threw herself in front of the twins. The moment crystallized into something eternal, something that would replay in Alejandro's mind for the rest of his life. Mia Reynolds, 122 pounds of fragile woman, wrapping her body around two children, curling herself into a shield. Her back exposed. Her arms around Emma and Marco. Her eyes closed. The gunfire erupted from multiple directions. 7 bullets entered her body across her ribs and shoulder, the impacts so rapid they sounded like a single explosion. Blood bloomed across her white shirt. She gasped but did not let go, did not move, did not allow her body to shift away from the children. The car crashed into a wall with the sound of tearing metal. Silence descended like a coffin lid. Then Emma's muffled crying from beneath Mia's body, "Miss Mia. Miss Mia, you are hurt, you are hurt." Alejandro reached them in 3 strides and lifted Mia's body with hands that were shaking. He had killed men. He had ordered men killed. He had built an empire on violence and silence and the willingness to do what others would not. But he had never experienced fear like this, fear that was eating him alive from the inside, fear that made him feel like a boy again, helpless and small. No. No. Mia, stay with me. Stay with me. She whispered, her voice barely audible. Safe, they are safe. I made sure they are safe. Then her eyes closed. Sergio caught her body as Alejandro staggered backward, his hands covered in blood that was not his own. One of the men was already on the phone. Ambulance to Pier 19, multiple gunshot wounds. Hurry, hurry. Emma and Marco were being cut loose from the zip ties, were being gathered into the arms of Sal and another of Alejandro's men, their small bodies shaking with shock. Douglas Hale was on his knees, hands zip-tied behind his back, trembling like a cornered animal as 4 of Alejandro's men surrounded him. He was trying to speak, trying to negotiate, trying to make deals with a man who had just watched the woman he loved take 7 bullets meant for his children. Please, Caruso, I did not know they were yours. I swear, I will leave the city, I will disappear, I will. Alejandro did not even look at him. His eyes were fixed on Mia's face, on the blood pooling beneath her, on the absolute wrongness of seeing her broken like this when just hours ago he had held her hand in the darkness and felt something shift in his chest that he had believed was permanently sealed. He turned to Sergio. Call the Moretti family. Tell them we have a gift. Douglas Hale. The man who helped Cordelia Blackwood steal their shipping routes 18 months ago. The man they have been searching for since. Sergio made the call. Within minutes, 2 black SUVs arrived at the warehouse. Vincent Moretti himself stepped out, a man in his 60s with silver threading through his dark hair and a scar running from his eye to his cheekbone. He saw Douglas Hale and smiled like a shark smiles at blood in the water. Douglas Hale, Vincent said. His voice was soft, almost gentle. We have been looking for you for 14 months. You cost us $4 million and 3 good men. We have been very patient. We have been very thorough. Douglas started screaming as Moretti's men dragged him toward their vehicles. He begged. He sobbed. He promised things he could not deliver. But his screams faded as the SUVs pulled away from Pier 19, and everyone watching understood that Douglas Hale was going somewhere worse than any prison, somewhere he would never return from. Cordelia Blackwood was being pulled from the crashed car by emergency responders, her designer coat torn and bloody, her face cut from the impact with the steering wheel. She was conscious enough to see the FBI agents arriving, see them consulting with Alejandro's lawyer, see the understanding dawn in her eyes that her entire world was collapsing. Agent Williams approached her with handcuffs. His voice was professional, final. Cordelia Blackwood, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit kidnapping, accessory to human trafficking, embezzlement of charitable foundation funds, tax fraud, and filing false documents with federal agencies. You have the right to remain silent. She screamed, do you know who I am? My family built this city. I will destroy all of you. I will. The handcuffs snapped shut. She was read her rights, her protests growing more frantic as she realized that her name, her money, her social standing meant nothing when weighed against federal crimes. Within hours, her arrest would be public. Within days, her entire empire would begin to crumble. 40 years in federal prison. Her wealth seized. Her foundation shuttered. Her name stripped from every building and every charity she had ever touched. Justice, Alejandro thought as he rode in the ambulance beside Mia's unconscious body, is not always death. Sometimes it is worse. Sometimes it is the slow, systematic destruction of everything a person believed made them untouchable. The ambulance sirens wailed through San Francisco's streets as dawn broke across the bay, and Mia Reynolds, bleeding and broken, remained unconscious, unaware that she had survived, unaware that she would live to see what comes after, unaware that the man beside her was already making plans to tear apart anyone who had ever hurt her. Family is not always bound by blood but by those who choose to stay when the storm arrives. The monitors beside her bed hum with the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. Beep! 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 Each pulse a small miracle, a confirmation that 7 bullets fired through a windshield at 30 miles per hour did not finish what Douglas Hale started 8 years ago. Afternoon light floods through the hospital room windows, soft and golden, the kind of light that belongs to healing. White gauze wraps her ribs and her left shoulder. A clear full line runs into her right arm. Everything hurts, but she is alive. Mia Reynolds opens her eyes slowly, and the first thing she does is panic. The twins? Her voice comes out shattered, barely a whisper, like something broken being dragged across gravel. Emma and Marco, are they? Completely unharmed. Alejandro Caruso sits in the chair beside her bed, and the sight of him stops her breathing. He is still wearing the shirt from the night of the shooting, now wrinkled and stained. The shadow of beard darkens his jaw. His eyes are red-rimmed, hollowed out by something between exhaustion and grief. His gold watch catches the afternoon light as he reaches carefully toward her hand, moving like a man who has learned that sudden movements can shatter fragile things. They ask about you every hour. Emma told the doctors that you are her real angel. She wants to laugh, but laughing will tear open the stitches that hold her together, so instead tears spill down her face without warning. I am nobody, she whispers. A broken thing a monster threw away. I am not anyone's angel. Alejandro's hand closes around hers. His grip is gentle, careful, nothing like the hand that commands 12 men dressed in black. Listen to me, he says, and his voice is like thunder wrapped in velvet, deliberate and absolute. You are the woman who chose my children over your own life. You saw danger running toward them, and you ran toward it instead of away. You are Mia Reynolds, and you are somebody. You are my children somebody. Do you understand? She does not understand. She has spent 8 years believing she was nothing, that survival meant being smaller and smaller until she disappeared completely. The $17 shoes. The converted closet bedroom. The meal stolen from restaurant garbage bins. The eviction notice with its red ink deadline. The $78 that was supposed to be her entire future. How can a woman with $78 to her name be anybody at all? What happened, she asks. After the car. Alejandro pulls a manila envelope from his jacket. His hands move slowly, deliberately, as if handling something sacred. First, the money you left on the dresser. $78. You were planning to disappear, were you not? She nods, unable to speak. You will never have to disappear again. He sets the envelope on the blanket beside her. Douglas Hale is gone. Erased. Not by law enforcement, but by people who owed me favors, and favors are a currency that matters far more than money in my world. He will never hunt anyone again. He will never hurt anyone again. He no longer exists. The words do not land immediately. Douglas Hale was the gravity that held her life in place, the reason she accepted the converted closet, the reason she never believed she deserved better. A world without him is a world without rules, and she has lived so long inside those rules that freedom sounds like a foreign language. Cordelia Blackwood, Alejandro continues, is in federal custody. Her trial started yesterday. 40-year sentence minimum. All her assets are frozen. The mansion you worked in, the clothing she wore, the social standing she believed made her untouchable, all of it is gone. But how? The eviction notice on your former apartment. He pulls out a second piece of paper, and she sees the red ink deadline that has haunted her for 12 days. The building is no longer operated by her family. I bought it this morning. Your former employer's lease has been terminated. You have no debts, no threats, no monsters hunting you. You are free. The word hangs in the hospital air like something dangerous. Free. What happens to me now? She asks, and her voice shakes like a candle in wind about to be extinguished. That depends entirely on you, he says. Emma and Marco need someone. They need a guardian. Someone who loves them. Someone who would die for them, as you already have. The position comes with a full salary, health benefits, and a real room with actual walls and a door that locks from the inside. A room where you have privacy, dignity, and safety. If you want it. Why would you do this? She cannot understand generosity this large. In her experience, kindness always comes with a hook, a price tag, a reason to regret. Why would you do any of this for me? Because somewhere between you saving my daughter's life and taking 7 bullets meant for my children, he says quietly, you became family. And I protect family with everything I have. Before she can respond, the door bursts open. Sergio tries to block it, but Emma and Marco are small and fast and determined. They climb carefully onto the hospital bed, moving like they have been coached in the art of not touching bandages, their small bodies careful and deliberate. Emma's eyes are red from crying, but she is smiling now. Please stay, Miss Mia, Emma whispers, her 5-year-old voice carrying the weight of desperate hope. Please be ours. Marco does not speak. Marco rarely does, but he places his small hand on her unbandaged arm and leaves it there, solid and warm. In that moment, wrapped in white gauze and hospital blankets, surrounded by 2 children who chose her and a man who saw her worth when she could not see it herself, Mia Reynolds understands something that 8 years of survival never taught her. Family is not always bound by blood. Sometimes it is bound by choice, by the moment you run toward danger instead of away from it, by the instant you decide that someone else matters more than your own life. The monitors beside her bed continue their steady rhythm. Beep. 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 Each pulse a confirmation that she will live to see what comes next. 6 months later, the scars have become silver lines running across her ribs and shoulder like maps of survival instead of suffering. October sunlight falls warm across Ocean Beach in San Francisco, and 4 people sit on the sand watching the waves. Emma and Marco build sandcastles, their laughter carrying on the salt wind. Mia wears a coat Alindro bought her, warm and expensive, nothing like the threadbare jacket she wore when she was invisible. Alindro sits beside her, his expensive shoes off, his feet in the sand like a man learning that earth feels good beneath his skin. You saved me, she says quietly, watching the children play. No, he replies. His hand finds hers without hesitation. You saved yourself. You saved my children. You saved all of us. The camera pulls back. 2 children laughing. A woman who learned she was worth saving. A man who learned that family is not always bound by blood but by those who choose to stay when the storm arrives. I spent 8 years believing I was nothing. But the night I took 7 bullets for 2 children who were not mine, I learned that heroism is not about being fearless. It is about being terrified and choosing love anyway. If this story touched you, drop a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for tomorrow's story where a homeless woman risks everything for a mafia boss's missing daughter and discovers that sometimes the people we save end up saving us right back. Remember this, you are not defined by what was done to you, but by what you choose to do when it matters most. Family is not always bound by blood but by those who choose to stay when the storm arrives.